I have a ton of parts around the shop that need to get rebuilt, and I need to keep the mess to a minimum, so I ordered a mobile teardown table from JEGS. If you're looking for a way to tear down parts while keeping the mess down, then stick around because this could be the table for you. This is an unboxing and a review, really initial impressions review of the build quality and the design of this JEGS transmission teardown table. And if you know what a transmission teardown table is, and you know how beneficial they are for all kinds of messy parts. If you have no idea what a transmission teardown table is, then I think the best way to sum it up is it is a table that catches all the fluids, the gunk, the nastiness, while you're working on something, primarily transmissions, automatic specifically. And if you've ever rebuilt an automatic transmission, you know how nasty they can get and how bad that used burned up fluid can smell. And I used to have a transmission teardown table I made myself, but that now is a welding table that I converted from a transmission teardown table to a welding table. And I needed a transmission teardown table because I have a lot of stuff to rebuild that would really benefit from having something that catches all the nastiness and helps with my workflow in the shop. So this is going to be the unboxing and the review of this transmission teardown table. Full disclaimer, I bought this myself. JEGS has no idea who I am. I don't really care. I needed this really bad. I did a lot of research and this seemed to be the most practical solution. It's not cheap. It came in around, I think like $700 after tax and shipping. I'll put a link in the description to the transmission teardown table. I did buy it from Amazon that went through JEGS. So JEGS coordinated all the shipping and everything. And you can buy it direct from JEGS, but buying off Amazon is pretty easy, and I've had some pretty expensive products from them in the past that have been total failures, and they're really hassle-free to work with and get them returned. So not that I plan on this failing, but if it was absolutely destroyed in shipping, Amazon's really good to work with. So that's who I went through. When I say review, like I said, this is really just an initial impression, and I've got some stuff that's pretty gross that I can throw in this and demonstrate right away. So that way you guys can kind of see how it works if you're not familiar with it. This is rated for 1,000 pounds on top of it, so we'll see how sturdy it feels. It is roughly 140 pounds. My wife helped me unload it from my truck. It came with the liftgate service, and the driver wheeled it around on a hand forklift. And it seems pretty beefy. So I'm going to start unboxing this and lay all the parts out and see what we're working with, so you get an idea of what you'd be getting into if you were to purchase this. So let's get some snips, get these bands that are not made for lifting, even though I kind of use them to lift it out of the truck. But they need to come off. This whole box needs to come off. Let's get this thing cracked open. I don't know what the advertised assembly time is for this. I'm assuming it has instructions, but if it doesn't, it's probably pretty straightforward to put together. It will come to you on a skid. So you can see here, you've got everything's laid out pretty nice. Pretty straightforward packaging. Looks like a pretty good glossy black finish that's probably going to get scratched up if I'm honest. I don't know how durable it'll be, but that's okay. This looks like the bottom shelf portion. We're just going to kind of lay everything out. Nope, and the scratching begins. Oh, this is going to be super easy to assemble. I'll bring you in here for a close-up here in a second, but the whole top portion of the transmission teardown table looks like it's pre-assembled. So we just got to put the legs and the casters on. I don't see any instructions so far. It's all good. I'm not sure I would have used them anyways because I've got a bad habit of that with benches and carts and tools. And I'd be lying if I said I haven't put some of the handles on rolling tool carts on backwards on accident that interfere with functionality with some of the carts, but I don't think I can do that with this one. So we'll see. Okay, so I could see how this holds 1,000 pounds. Here's one of the legs for it, and it's fully boxed in. Appears to be, maybe 1/8 inch steel, maybe a little under that. Welded ends. Yeah, it feels like 1/8 inch plate. It's hard to tell. It's got a really good coating on it. The welds look pretty good. They're a little cold, but I mean, pretty much all mass manufactured stuff is these days. This will be pretty good. Hopefully everything lines up well. So far, so good. I'm going to get the other legs out. So you got 4 corners of these, and these are probably 15, 20 pounds a pop. So they've got some pretty good mass to them. Okay, the legs are the same. There's 4 legs total. And there's a lot to this, so I'll get a good scan of everything as it's kind of laid out so you get an idea of all the components that come with it. But I can tell you from first impressions, this is going to be pretty easy to assemble. The hardest part will probably be balancing the heavier weight. But maybe not, because the way it's designed, it's vertically mounting. It's not side mounting. So I think I'm going to be able to basically mount either the top to the legs or the bottom with the casters to the legs and then put the top on top of it. I don't know. We'll see. Probably build it upside down, if I had to guess. Not a whole lot of styrofoam in the packaging. There wasn't a ton of information about this teardown table or other teardown tables on the internet. And I think that it's a really uncommon tool / workbench, work area in a lot of home garages, small shops, and also places that don't specialize in transmissions. But I can tell you from experience that while I had a transmission teardown table for transmissions, almost everything that needed to be torn down, whether it was a carburetor, whether it was transfer cases, even like being able to like spray and clean off U-joints on a drive shafts before you either torch them or use a U-joint removal tool or a vise to take the U-joints out. Like the transmission table seemed to be the home for all that, just because of the convenience of catching all the cleaner, the gunk. And so like for me, I've got a ton of stuff. I've got transfer cases I got to rebuild. I've got 2 engines right now, actually 3 if I count the Xtera's engine, that have to get rebuilt. And while the engine's not going on the transmission teardown table, the small parts are going to get cleaned, laid out, organized, put back together with lubricants, engine assembly lube all over them, which I can spray down with like Simple Green and clean the table up real easy afterwards. And so I have a lot of work for this table. And this being on casters is awesome because I have a really small shop. I've got like 1,800 square feet, and one whole corner of the shop is really for fabrication and machining and 3D printing, while this whole side is really just trucks and Jeeps and real automotive stuff. Moving this thing around and being able to put everything on it is going to be awesome. So I think it's a really valuable piece of any garage, to be honest. And if you can't afford to buy one of these just because of budget constraints, you can make a pretty affordable one. I think when I made mine, it was like 200 bucks in parts. And it wasn't nearly as beefy as this, but it did the job. I rebuilt a 1-ton Rams transmission on there and manhandled it, swung it around, slapped it. I had drip pans underneath it, so it kind of worked, but it was nothing like this. All right, looking for hardware. I don't see any hardware. Ah, it's in the drip pan. Ah. Hammer fist action for any McMappers out there. Okay, cool. So I've got actually got the drip pan out. Let me fix the camera. Whoop. And it came with instructions that, I don't know if I'll use them or not, but they look good enough. It's one sheet. For those of you that go very detailed into instructions when assembling stuff, I mean, it gives you a packing list pretty much of all the accessories and hardware. And then it has 2 steps. So pretty simple. Hard to mess up. It looks like you build it upside down, kind of like what I was saying with these 4 posts that bolt vertically. And I think I can get in there for you to see. And then you basically mount one of the trays. I don't know, we'll figure that out. But it is pretty straightforward. There's not even much hardware. So far, I really like this. And then this is the composite. I don't know what, it's probably made of nylon if I had to guess, just because of the chemical resistance in nylon, but it's basically the drip pan that slides in a drawer, and it can take 11 pounds. So that's quite a bit of fluid. I don't think you'll get that much out of a fully filled transmission. But you got to remember to empty this. I could see like working on stuff like nonstop and this thing filling up, but I doubt it will fall. It seems like a sturdy normal drip pan, which normal drip pans are pretty sturdy. And then you've got a box for hardware, which is also very straightforward. So I'm gonna get this thing laid out because I want to spill some stuff in it and test it. So let's get this thing laid out so you can see it and then get it built. And I'm gonna leave the top right in the box. That'll be like my work area. Sweet. So you got 4 casters, obviously 4 corners. You've got lockable, and then you've got non-lockable. Neither one of them are fixed casters, so you should have a lot of flexibility to move this thing around when it's loaded down. So like for me, I've basically got 2 workstations where I'm working on the CJ, I'm working on the F250. Both have equal amount of rebuild kind of going on, and I'm waiting on parts. I've got special parts on order for both of them, and while I'm waiting on the CJ, I would like the flexibility to move the cart over and work on the F250. And for free casters that rotate fully will be great. And then the one that locks, you're probably going to want to lock this because of the sheer weight of this alone. This thing could probably creep on you, especially if it's loaded with parts. But cool, pretty straightforward. They look like they've got a dense polyurethane coating on them, some kind of chemical resistant wheel. I don't know, they look good enough. So here is the walkthrough of the parts. Here's the legs I was telling you about. And you can see how they have the vertical mounting orientation. So we should be able to drop those right on top of the top portion of the table. And then this is the bottom shelf with the instructions. There's the drip pan, drip tray. And then moving over, here is the whole top of the teardown table. And you can see it's pretty much assembled already. A lot of it is welded in too, so it's got cross members and braces that are fully welded in. The corners are reinforced, which is super cool. And it feels like 1/8 inch around there, maybe a little under that, depending on what's coating it. I'm curious, this is on bearings. We'll see how that moves when it's loaded with some tools. And I do have some specific transmission tools that I can keep in there that I really don't use for anything else. Some special snap ring, pliers, all kinds of stuff. Here are the casters. You can see that whatever's coating on there. And if I bring it up, you can definitely see the contrast between the wheel and whatever's on the end. It feels like polyurethane, like really dense polyurethane. And then this is the bag of hardware. Pretty straightforward. We got some different sizes in there, but overall, this is a pretty simple, straightforward build. I kind of thought it would all be in pieces and that I would have to go through and like assemble the whole top of the transmission teardown table. So definitely think it's a bonus because I don't want to spend that much time building this thing. So I'd like to get it together and start using it. So let's start putting it together. Something I like to do that's helpful when assembling new tools, especially stuff that has a bunch of hardware, is I use some of the magnetic trays and I lay everything out in the magnetic tray instead of spreading it all out on the floor, just because I have totally lost bolts immediately. I'm like the worst at losing bolts. And so, yep, this has saved me a lot of heartache and helps keep things organized. So just a little tip I thought I'd share. All right, so there are 16 of these M8 by 16 metric bolts. They use a 12 millimeter socket. And while the posts have different size or different oriented legs on them, it's hard to mess it up because they only line up one way. And you start just by bolting these posts into the table. There's no washers. You can see these have a bottom flange that will grip, so they're not going to come loose once they bite in. Underneath the back side of the bolt. See if I got enough space with my, yep. I'm not doing super tight, only because I want to be able to lock in or bolt the bottom part of the there we go. That's actually tighter than I want it to be. There we go, that's nice and loose. And I'm just gonna repeat this step for all four corners. All right, next we are going to mount the shelf in, the bottom shelf, and that will actually bolt in horizontally through the side. So, oh, it's adjustable. That's sweet. There's actually 3 mounting locations so you can adjust that shelf to really suit your needs, or put another shelf in there if you can fabricate. And I don't know if you can get a whole other shelf from JEGS, but wouldn't be much to make a couple of cross members to give yourself a shelf, or if you want to brace the backside. I think this will be plenty beefy though, because even the little shelf it has is pretty stout. It thing's like, it's probably, I don't know, 20 pounds or so. And it's all bent. I don't see any welds, so all one piece. It's cool. And the side shelf is going to go in with, let's see, looking for the hardware identifier, bolt I. And I don't know if the bolt identification will be the same if you get this, so don't pay attention to my lettering, but they are metric M8 by 55 millimeters. So they're basically the long bolts. That makes sense. And this is where an extra set of hands would probably help. But you know what? Let's try to do it by ourselves. Whoop. Kind of get it in. There go all my scratches. My fresh. More scratches. I'm going to do the very end of this. Whoop. And there should be enough room to get maybe, I might have to call for wife reinforcements. I don't want to. I want to get this thing put together. So there's one. That's not that bad. Now I'm going to do the other side. If I can find the hole to feed it through. There we go. Cool. I'm not sure of when you'd want to put this at a higher spot, closer towards the top of the bench. Maybe if you needed to clear over something, that'd be a good use case for it. In my situation, I'd rather have more storage space to roll around with. So we're going to put it on the very tallest portion of it. All right, now that I've got this somewhat stationary, I'm going to go through and repeat the process for all 4 corners. And there are 2 bolts that go into each post and 2 nuts that back it. And they are all 12 millimeter. Sweet. It's worth mentioning that the bolt holes line up really well. So there's no weird manufacturing quality defects that have you trying to ram a bolt through a hole, line it, bend it, do all kinds of stuff, because that happens quite a bit with, especially when stuff's bent form. But these lined up really well, and all the bolt holes were adequately cut, so diameters were good. So far, pretty quality table. All right, let's see. Let's finish it up. We've still got some room for some issues to occur. So let's see. Let's get this thing put together. It's worth mentioning that the corner bolts that are closest to the end of the bottom shelf are really hard to get access to with a standard socket and a deep socket, and even the end of a box end wrench. So I use the open end and just kind of like angle it in there just to back the bolt or the nut a little bit, and then you can get plenty of torque for what this is used for. And you can get plenty of access on the bolts that are a little farther inboard. So just a side note, because I was wondering why I couldn't get my socket to go on. I thought, man, did I put some other size nuts on there? No, it's just hard to get to. Okay, back to getting this put together. Now that we got the bottom storage shelf in, we can go through and torque down the part of the post that goes into the actual top of the table. Because right now I've got them like a little bit tighter than finger tight just to be able to align the posts. And I will say it helps out a ton. I almost could have been looser with the post to help align these side bolts, but it worked out pretty good. So we're just going to get in there and give them some torque. Now that we've got the 4 posts mounted into the top of the table, we've got the bottom shelf mounted in with those horizontal side bolts, it looks like our final step is to mount the casters. And nothing special here, these are straightforward. We're just going to feed a bolt through the top and back it with a nut on the bottom side of the caster. Makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And let me see what size those bolts and those nuts are for you, so you don't have to try to figure it out. They look to be 10 millimeter. Let me double check. The 2 smallest pieces of hardware that comes with the table are both 10 millimeters. So I'm just going to use a wrench and a socket. Pretty straightforward. And these you can torque down on the first shot. So let me get those going. And there's not a special side to lock these down on, so whatever your preference is, I'm going to put both of my locking casters on one of the ends of the table. If you plan on putting the table in an area that you seldomly move it, you could get away with probably putting the locking casters on the forward side because they're all swivels. They're not locked. They're not fixed, excuse me. Whatever your preference is, which is pretty cool. I actually prefer swivel casters on all corners rather than the fixed ones in most applications. Everything lines up nice. Cool. And because these are swivel casters, you can move the wheel out of the way instead of trying to get in there and angle a bolt perfectly. So I'm just going to repeat that process for all 4 corners, and you've got 16 bolts total, 16 nuts, and it's looking like there is a perfect amount of hardware with this table, so you do not want to lose it. But these are all pretty common size pieces of hardware, so if you're like me and you lose hardware and you keep a whole bunch of hardware in stock, then don't worry, you could probably pull something off the shelf to put this together. Cool, there we go. Sweet. All right, I'm gonna repeat this for all 4 corners. And then it'll be time to flip this thing right side up and get a look at it. Okay, tables for the most part put together minus putting the drip pan back in. And I said I thought there would be no hardware left, but there's actually one piece of hardware left for the M8 bolts that bolt the actual posts into the top of the table. And there are one piece of each for the small hardware that is used to bolt the casters in. So still not a lot of wiggle room, but pretty straightforward. And if you're, especially if you're using a magnetic tray, you're not as likely to lose your bolts. But like I said, all standard sizes. So let's get this thing upright and check it out. It has a nice glossy finish. I don't know if it looks like it's powder coated. Definitely at a minimum E-coated, but I can see some of the powder coating imperfections because it does have a very thick coat of whatever's on there. So it is slick. So if you're like me and you want to flip this thing upright without help, wear some gloves that have some grip. Okay, that's on. We're gonna go nice and slow. Whoa, yep. It's heavy. Oh, man. It's definitely very stout though. Okay, whoa. Wow, this thing is beefcake. Whew. Rolls really nice, partially because of how heavy it is. Let me rotate this. Move my mess really quick. I'll deal with my cardboard pile later. All right. Make sure you can see. So here's the location for the drip pan. Cool. And I want to say the dimensions are like 47 inches wide by, let me get a tape measure. That'll solve the mystery. So you don't have to go look for it. Okay, so this is super important information I look for. So this is information that I'm assuming you would want to know. We are 25 inches deep towards me, so you've got plenty of depth for transmissions, transfer cases, heads. Now you can have like a carburetor assembly line on this thing and have them apart. And you've got 47 inches width-wise, so pretty wide. Kind of like your standard workbench you can get, or tool chest that you can get from a lot of the box stores. And then here's another important measurement. In between the bottom shelf and the bottom of the trays, you've got like 17 3/4 inches height-wise. If that gives you an idea for any kind of smaller tool chest you want to put on there, or large parts, or like for me, I've got some hardware trays associated with engine teardown and transmission teardown, clutch and steel cylinders for different gears and transmissions, or gear clusters. You can get away with accessorizing this thing kind of however you'd want, with magnets. If you can 3D print, you could do all kinds of stuff for how you want to hold things on here. Some of the top-end rebuild stations that hold the valve train components, like push rods, valves, springs, seats, you could easily fit 1 or 2 of those, depending on your engine configuration you work on the bottom. So that's pretty helpful. Yeah, this is a sweet station. And it's got a locking. If you're in a shop someplace, I'm gonna get my keys out. I'm gonna get some snips. But it's got keys. All right, keys I will try not to lose. The tool tray right here is locking, and it's pretty loose. It's not like a soft catch, heavy duty drawer, but I don't think you're gonna have a ton of weight in this. Like, I don't know, I've got, like I said, snap ring pliers associated with transmissions. I've got some engine builder tools that I may keep around here, like camshaft bearing removal tools, but I might just leave those where they're at because I've got different engines that require different tools. I think that if you load this for whatever you're working on, you've got plenty of space. That's for sure. We'll do a close-up of the table so you can see it, and then we'll do a test on the table. And I've got the perfect training aid to throw it on here and see what happens. All right, so you can see the top of the table, and this is what makes it really unique if you're not familiar with transmission teardown tables, is that everything's concaved and goes in, and so all the fluid will catch and drain. And then that is why you have your removable drip pan right here, because that'll catch the fluid. Here's the little drawer for holding the tools. Nothing fancy here. The dimensions of the drawer, let's get that really quick. Totally forgot to get that. The dimensions of the drawer are, you've got roughly 13.5 inches widthwise, and then you've probably got just under 17 inches of depth in there. And then as far as height goes, you've got about 4 inches to work with, probably right to here. Let me go over a little bit, you can see. And I don't think there's anything underneath it, no. There's something, oh. There's like a, oh, that's the catch for the lock. I felt something underneath it. And then let's look at the bottom of it. If you're a Summit Racing truthful, fanboy, hardcore, you've got tons of JEGS decals on this, or not tons, just one big one, which it looks pretty good at the table with the black. And then you can see the boxed in legs. And then the bottom shelf is obviously wide open. And like I said, you've got locking casters on one end. My preference of where the locking casters are the end where the fluid will catch. So I don't really, in my case, it doesn't really matter as long as they lock. Okay, so now we've got it all set up. I've got one part in particular that is perfect for this table, and it's not an engine, it's not a transmission, it's not a carburetor, it's not even an engine component. It's not even a drivetrain component, but it'll give you an idea of the versatility that a transmission teardown table can offer for your garage. So let me grab it. I give to you the most massive HVAC heater core, evap core box that I've ever worked with, that bolts in the front of the firewall of the F-250. And I need to get in there and repair the heater core, which is right here. But this heater core is filled with coolant still because the entry and exit of the fluid going in and out is right at the top of it. So other than the fluid that I dumped all over my boots when I pulled it out, there's still a lot in there. So this should be perfect. And I'm already scratching it. That's okay. That'll give a good idea for how durable this paint is. Oh yeah, look at that. Spilling everywhere. Perfect. Let's just leave it so it drips. Now the fluid isn't running to drain. It's kind of pooling, and I don't have it with me. I don't know where I put it, but what I use to kind of encourage the fluid to go in the drains on my old transmission table was just like a little windshield squeegee, and I could go run it in and kind of guide it to where it needed to go. So I'm actually going to put it upside down and just let it sit and drain. There we go. It's running slowly, but it's all going towards where the drain is. And I rubbed a pretty sharp corner of this, and this is like a nylon box. It's not metal, it's like a reinforced nylon. And there are some metal components and flanges on it. And did it like I just would have if I was working on something. And I didn't remove any paint, but I definitely left some marks in the powder coat or paint or whatever it is. I think it's safe to say that no matter how careful you are with the top of this table because of the stuff you're working on, especially cast iron parts, that this paint is going to get tore up. That's fine. You can go through and resurface it. So there will be some kind of maintenance and upkeep. I had a bare top, just a bare steel top on my transmission teardown table, and obviously I didn't care about the paint, but I don't know. We'll see how well this holds up. I'm pretty pumped because I've been waiting for this table. It took like a week after I ordered it for it to arrive off of Amazon. Like I said, because it was shipped from JEGS. But there's a lot of usage for this table. So as far as reviews go, this is really just a first impressions review. And I can tell you that my first impressions of this table are very good. It's a well-built, heavy-duty table, and it's good. Oh, I hear it dripping into the drip pan. Pretty sure the drip pan. I was like, did I push it all the way back? The drip pan is like, the hole for the drain is like center mass with the drip pan, and the drip pan is recessed all the way in. So you're going to want to make sure that's pushed all the way in, and it hits a backstop and it will stop. But I've got an idea to work on axles potentially on top of this because of the weight. And I've got to fabricate some end pieces that will hold that weight. But an axle that has the shafts out, has the hubs off, and is just basically the axle housing is well within the 1,000-pound weight range. I mean, you're 200 pounds, 400 pounds maybe if it's a beefy axle. That way can work on pinions for regearing, for putting lockers in, whatnot. This is like my drivetrain / engine rebuild station is what I plan on doing with it. But like I said, this initial impression is really good with this. This table is going to get used a ton on this channel. So if you're really curious to the longevity of it, you're going to find out. And we're going to really speed up the wear and tear on this table because I have, right off the top of my head, like 5 or 6 things that need to get rebuilt on this table. Everything from cylinder heads to laying out engine components to dragging parts all over it to transfer cases to transmissions. This heater core box, and then I've got 3 axles off the top of my head that have to get rebuilt, re-geared, and some kind of traction aid put in. So this is going to be on the channel a lot. So if you're really curious to how this thing's going to unfold, stick around. We're going to have lots of stuff with it. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode. If you like this style review and found it very helpful, then like and subscribe. It costs nothing to you and it helps the channel out. And I've got a lot of other product style reviews planned for this. I wouldn't call this, this channel's not focused on reviews. However, I do a lot of research on YouTube myself for products and product info. And sometimes I can't find the info I want and I get lucky. Other times I get a product I assumed was okay and it wasn't, or I've been burned by really bad reviews. So you'll find that my reviews are very, very straightforward, and I try to provide as much actual use of the product that is being reviewed in the channel. But I'll say this thing is awesome, way better than my transmission table that I built, and I look to beating it up pretty bad and using it and seeing how it holds up. So yeah. Anyhow, I'm going to get to putting everything away, getting rid of my mound of cardboard, and getting set up to tear this thing down and rebuild it. So, all right, I'll see you next time. Thanks.